The year is 2002. The morning is dark and stormy as the luminous clouds send booming thunder ricocheting from house to house in my quaint Ohio township. My father and I sit in beach lawn chairs in our paint chipping garage and view as the wind howls like a dog in our ears and the yellow lightning, quick as a whip, slashes through the crisp summer air. Fast forward. The year is 2005. The typical afternoon shower is blooming threateningly outside my family's new Florida apartment. My father and I stand curiously, hand in hand, on our back porch observing our first non-Ohio storm. We keep fascinated by the phenomenon during its many 5-minute intervals, our lungs craving for clean, fresh, breathable air, and being disappointed to only find humidity that left our bodies breathless. The white-hot lightning strikes down on the overly watered emerald field of grass for what seems like an 8-year-old, no more than a few miles. I am currently 15, and can still hear the thunder rumbling through our hollow freight boxcars on the train tracks in the backyard. People and creatures alike became deceased as a result of the second most deadly natural disaster, the Great Okeechobee Hurricane. Unfortunately, prejudice against poor migrant workers, who were mostly black, survived if not flourished during the 1900s. Why was the 1928 Okeechobee Hurricane substantially more devastating to the poor blacks and other impoverished minorities than to the more affluent whites? Based on my personal experience of living in the Glades during Hurricane Wilma, non-whites are at a socioeconomic disadvantage because they are typically low-paid migrant workers. I lived in the Glades during Hurricane Wilma in 2005. Even in modern times, the experience of the storm and the aftermath are polar opposites between the upper echelon and the economically challenged. Wilma destroyed poorly constructed older homes from winds and flooding, which caused the poor African Americans and migrant workers to have to live in FEMA trailers. Oppositely, most whites, like my family, hunkered down in modern concrete block houses during the storm. Our housing had repairable damage and was covered by homeowners insurance. After the storm, my middle-class family went on vacation to Disney World for a week to wait for the power and water to be restored. The poor black community stayed without basic human necessities like electricity and running water. The long-term impacts continued to be more severe for the economically disadvantaged. The migrant workers lost their livelihoods. The sugarcane harvest was destroyed because of the cane was knocked down, and the citrus trees got canker, which did not recover for 5 years. Canker causes the citrus tree to continually decline in health and fruit production until the tree produces no fruit at all. The white office workers, such as my mom, went back to their cushy office jobs 1 week later. Her employer, U.S. Sugar, as a part of her bonus, repaired our apartment. The company brought in bottled water and a generator to make the office pleasant for their primarily white middle-class employees. The hurricane on September 16, 1928, had a massive death toll. 1,836 human beings died in Florida, mainly due to the lake surge that caused flooding. During this time, communications and infrastructure were less than adequate. The people had no warning that the storm was coming and were ill-prepared when it hit. Even if they had known about the severity of the storm, there was nowhere for them to have gone. The flooding caused by the hurricane had more significant negative socioeconomic impact on the people that were already poor. Not only did they lose their lives, but they lost their livelihoods and everything they owned. This had a long-term psychological effect on the indigent people of the Glades. Even though the hurricane destroyed everything in its path, 75% of the fatalities were from migrant farm workers, most of whom were black. The reason for this was that the economically poor areas were in a low-lying region around the southern part of Lake Okeechobee. This inequality caused racial issues that still exist today. As a result from the storm, the migrant workers were dislocated from their normal lives and many lost their livelihoods. The flooding destroyed agriculture and livestock. Flooding and high winds killed more than 3,000 people in the Glades. The poor migrant people of the Glades were dealing with the huge social trauma of losing their loved ones, while simultaneously dealing with other atrocities. They struggled to bury the dead. The saturated water held them from proper burials. In other words, the bodies kept floating to the surface of the water. Finally, when the National Guard was sent in to help, they had the blacks make nice, cozy coffins for the 70 white dead that went into the common grave at West Palm Beach's Woodlawn Cemetery. Well, they took the unaccounted black corpses and savagely piled them into a mass grave, then burned them till there was nothing left. The bodies that were not set afire were stacked in an unmarked grave in the community. Throughout the years, passerbyers who did not know any better toppled on the mass grave. Soon enough, Roads and buildings were constructed over the grave as the town attempted to reshape itself. The unmarked mass grave of poor black people was forgotten by even their fellow neighborhood. In December of the year 2000, 7 decades later, local groups forced the government to mark the ground for a proper burial, creating peace, declaring the poor black migrant workers as equals, and paying them the respect that they should have had from the start. Although I was not alive during September 1928, I can imagine it. 18 inches of rain fell within 24 hours. Houses destroyed, families ripped from each other's grasp. There is nothing around but water. Dead men, women, and children float through the murky water past the roofs of others' engulfed homes. What a day in hell.